Hey guys, welcome to what I made in 2022. I have a lot of crochet pieces. I think crochet is the majority of what I did this year. A few knit pieces and a few pieces that I sewed as well, including a wedding dress. So stay tuned. I'm gonna start right at the beginning. I learned to crochet in like May or June this year when I was just at home like in bed. And I had been wanting to learn how to crochet for quite some time, and I had some yarn and some hooks. So yeah, I just found a pattern on Pinterest. It's this little top here. I made this in a Wool and the Gang sock yarn. It's like 100% wool, I think, just because that's what I had. It went pretty well. The side seam is like a bit on the diagonal instead of straight, but not a huge deal. The next crochet project that I want to show you, it was definitely the most fun I've ever had making a garment. I think that's because it was a granny square project and I got to have a lot of fun with color. So here it is. This is made with like 90% secondhand yarn. So she had this one ball of brown wool, which is this brown here. But I soon realized that I would not have enough to complete the vest, so I started making some other squares with this brown here. It's just a brown cotton. I didn't use a pattern or anything. I just made a bunch of granny squares, and then the only like shaping that I did was at the shoulders, because your shoulder has like a slope to it. You can kind of see, I just did like some shaping. My next crochet project is possibly my favorite. Yeah, I think it's my favorite crochet piece that I've made to date. I'm very excited to show you, but before I show you that, I will show you this little shirt that I made to go underneath it. So this is just a very simple little tank top. I made it with my serger. Very simple. This is a really nice fabric. It's like bamboo fabric. And the real star of the show is my vest. The Kandinsky vest. Oh my God. I love her. It took me forever because I did the back first and I fell in love with it. And then I did the front and they were a little different. Like the front didn't have as much like navy space. This is the back. It didn't have as much navy space. It was more colorful. The squares were bigger and I didn't like it as much. So I ripped out the entire front and redid it. So all in all, yeah, this vest was a labor of love, but I'm not mad about it. Like, I just adore it. And I learned how to do this ribbed neckline, which I really like. So yeah, I'm just entirely very pleased with this vest. It's cotton, so it'll be like a nice spring and fall piece. Oh, and yeah, this is the matching toque I made with scraps. Let's talk about knitting for a while. I learned how to knit in September. I think the first knitting piece that I finished was this top. This is the Pop Top by Josephine Dyring Knits. Great pattern, pretty easy. The only modifications that I had to do was at the shoulder. I had to add like 3 inches or so to the straps here. They were really short, so everything kind of like came up like this. That does look very cute. But yeah, like my head wouldn't have been able to fit through it. So if you are making this pattern, maybe keep that in mind. Very pleased with this top. Love, love, love it. Brown is a big color for me. Loved it so much that I made a second one. This one I have not yet woven in the ends because when I finished it, I was not convinced that I liked it. I'm still not convinced that it is the top for me.
I think mostly just because of the coloring. I don't think these colors really flatter me all that much, kind of like light gray, beigey tones.
I put in these little splashes of green. What did I do? I made the holes smaller and I made more of them. This was so much work to knit because of this self-striping yarn. I just found it in a little shop. There was just one ball of it and it was 40% off. It's not obvious. Well, now that I like know about self-striping yarn, I didn't know about it when I bought this yarn. So now I think I would clue in. But at the time, I just thought like, oh, it's kind of a beige yarn with little flecks of brown and gray. Like, I didn't know that it would actually stripe like this and be so uniform. So it wasn't a problem for the bottom. Like, you knit this top from the bottom up, and so from the bottom to the armholes, smooth sailing. But you bind off for the arms, and then you work each, like the top in 3 sections. So you do the back in 1 section and the front in 2 sections. And that is just a nightmare. If you have ever worked with self-striping yarn, I think you'll understand. Just beware what projects you use self-striping yarn for, is all that I would say, because this took so much longer than it needed to, just because of that. This is my favorite thing that I've ever made. It's the first sweater that I made. Going back in time, I would not have made my first sweater in a moss stitch or a seed stitch, but I didn't know any better. I just saw this pattern on Wool and the Gang. It's a free pattern. It's the splash sweater. And I just fell in love with like the really oversized, relaxed style. And the moss stitch really gives me like grandpa vibes. It's kind of like a waffle knit in my mind, which always I associate with grandpas. I don't know why. But yeah, I just really liked the look of the pattern. What I didn't know is that moss stitch is very condensed. And so if you were to knit like 28 rows in stockinette and 28 rows in moss stitch, your stockinette would be much taller than your moss stitch. So just in order to like create a sweater, you need to make so many more stitches. So this was a long process for me. There's no neck shaping in this pattern, and I didn't know about neck shaping because it was the first sweater that I had ever knit. And so I started with a back piece, and it was basically just like a rectangle with like another little like a rectangle with a stubby little like neck square poking up, you know, for the collar. And in my mind, I was like, this is not right, because I sew and I know all about neck shaping and like how important shaping is. And I was kind of thinking like, oh, it's knit, it'll drape, whatever, it's fine, maybe it makes sense. But it just like did not feel right to me. And so I went online and I looked into neck shaping and short rows and everything. And I decided to rip back the neck portion and add in some German short rows for shaping. And I'm really glad that I did that, especially on the front. Like, I just don't know how well this would have fit if I had not made that modification to the pattern. Like, you can see it scoops as a neck should. If it were just like flat across, I don't think it would fall very nicely. So that was one modification that I did. The other was the arm shaping in the pattern.
Had like a very, very aggressive decrease.
I knit an entire sleeve, just following the pattern, not really thinking like, do I like this shape? And once I had completed the sleeve, bound off and everything, I kind of just like draped it over my arm to see the fit. It was so tight at the wrist. It was really gross. Like, it was this wide at the underarm, but it like, I don't know, it was just horrible. It was way too tight. Like, it was like tight on my forearm and wrist. Really weird. I would recommend this pattern just because it's fun. Like, it's got this massive cable. I don't know, I just love the look of it. So I would recommend the pattern, and it's free, but those would be my two suggested modifications. Would be adjust the arm decreases so that it's not so tight, and add some neck shaping. And you're gonna have an incredibly cozy sweater. Do I regret making this? No. It's cute. It's fun. It was nice to finish a project. I was following Kara's Knitting, and she is like a big advocate for chunky yarn because it works up very quickly and then you have a finished product. Single ply wool is good for felting, And so I'm kind of interested to maybe like knit some flat panels and then sew them together into like a jacket or something with this yarn. I don't know, like I really would like to use the material. It's very good quality. So I think that's what I will do. I'm gonna rip it back and use the yarn for a felting project. Let me know if you have used this yarn or a similar yarn. Like I'll show you. This is an end that I just haven't woven in. Like it's so, like there's no twist to it. It's just fluff. So speaking of felting, I made a hat. This is not at all how I thought the hat would turn out. I was intending to make a bucket hat, and this is not a bucket hat. It's like a little helmet. I tried, I used a free pattern from the Drops website, and I think they were using a single ply yarn, and I was not using a single ply yarn. I was using a yarn with a lot of twist. So maybe that is why it didn't work out quite so well. But I modified the pattern, even like I made mine less big, less tall, because as I was knitting theirs, I was just like, this is insane. I think I need to make some changes. And it still turned out huge. Like if I were to roll this down and have it as a bucket hat, like there's just no way. On the pattern, it says like, just knit up your hat and throw it in the washing machine on hot with like some tennis balls and you'll have a felted hat. And that's not at all how it worked for me. I put it in the washing machine once, took it out, there was almost no change. So I decided to, I kind of looked online and saw what other people were doing. I saw this one guy who his wife had crocheted him a hat, and they just put it in hot soapy water and kind of just like rubbed the fibers together really aggressively. And that seemed to work out well. So I gave that a try. Didn't really work all that well. Like I knit this with 2 strands of worsted weight. So it's like a very, very thick fabric. I spent a lot of time rubbing these fibers together. Didn't really work. My aunt came to the rescue. She has like a deep steam cycle on her washer and like a sanitize setting on her dryer. So they just get like very, very hot. And she put this through on those cycles 4 times for me. And finally it took form. So thank you, Dawn. Thank you for your help. I am so pleased with this strange little helmet hat that I am now in possession of. This is going to be so warm. I live in Canada, so this is perfect for the winter. Because when you felt wool, it becomes almost like windproof and waterproof. Wool already has like some waterproof. What's that word? Some waterproof tendencies, capacities. But yeah, it just becomes like more so when it's felted. So yeah, I would recommend. Because I did want a felted bucket hat, I tried again. And it almost worked. Okay, it didn't almost work. It was closer to working. But the brim got quite ruffled. And I know that's like kind of a look. I've seen a video essayist who was wearing a crocheted ruffle hat in one of her sweaters, and I just saw last night like somebody put a clip of an Emma Chamberlain video, and she was also wearing like a ruffled crochet bucket hat. So I knew they were kind of like trendy, but it wasn't what I was going for. And although it was kind of cute, I never would have worn it. It started out like this, ended like this. I was like, oh, this is cute, but I'm never gonna wear it. I thought, let me felt this even more so that it's a smaller size and my niece can wear it, which is what I did. But honestly, the ruffles, it's kind of like bent and folded right now. But yeah, the ruffles just like did not come out all that nicely. It's a thing I made. Now it just sits in the closet. Okay. Second sweater of the year. This is so much fun. It's like a little pink cloud. So this is the, I don't know, Mohair sweater. I don't think they have like particularly creative names. I really like this sleeve shape, how it just kind of like balloons but really caps off at the end. I like the collar. I'm just not convinced about it though. Like, as much as I love it, I do recognize that this is quite a trendy look right now, like the fluffy mohair loose knit look, and I do love it. But again, I do want longevity with my pieces, so I think maybe I'll wear this like a few more times, but I do have plans to rip it out. I have another lighter pink yarn that I've swatched with one strand of this mohair, and it looks really nice. So I think I might rip this back and use the yarn to make another sweater with a slightly different vibe that I think I might just wear more. Okay, another crochet piece. This was an interesting make. It was this is a freehand piece, so I didn't use a pattern for this and I had no plan. I just kind of made a chain. It didn't even occur to me to like make a front and make a back and then seam them together. That would have been much easier, but what I did was I made a chain and then I joined it so it was like a big circle, and that was my neck hole. And then I just kind of like kept going around in circles, almost like making like a very thick necklace, and then at a certain point I like used chains to, I don't know, like make an armhole. It was quite fun learning what I could do with different stitches. I don't think I'll ever wear this, to be honest. It was more of a interesting creative pursuit. I do think that somebody probably will wear this, so maybe I'll try and sell this one as well. Everything left is sewing, so if that's what you're interested in, here we go. The first project I made this year was a little corset top, and I used the Rose Cafe bustier pattern, and I just modified it to have straps like built into the top instead of just like attaching a little ribbon strap as they suggest in the pattern. So this was really fun. That was a very interesting exercise for me drafting these straps. I'm happy with how this turned out. It was a very fun make for me just because it is so technical. Like, there's boning, there's lining, there's underwire. It was my first time using underwire. I made it from a thrifted IKEA pillowcase and a thrifted IKEA sheet for the lining. What do I have to say about this? I was happy with the fit. I do wish that I had drafted the straps like a bit, with a bit more of a scoop here, instead of having all this fabric here, like more of a scoop. I think that would have given it like a more of a sporty look, which is what I was going for, like with all this top stitching. I did want more of a sporty look, but that's fine. The bigger problem was the underwire. If anybody has like a lot of experience sewing underwire, I would be very curious about this. I just bought some underwires that were my size, but I wonder if I have them. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? I'm gonna go get them. I bought these. They fit. The only problem is that the curve of this underwire is set. Like, I don't really think you can bend it, like, to be a little bit, you know, wider. I kind of tried to like pull it, but I don't think you can really bend them unless maybe you get them like really hot. This fits me and this fits me, but the curves are different. You can see like they just don't really like make sense together. They almost do. They really almost do. But this underwire, like, it just wanted to pull this way. Yeah, basically, like, I could get them in there and they did stay, but it was creating a lot of pressure on this little elastic channel. Like, it was like constantly pulling and stretching, and at a certain point it just ripped through. So yeah, I don't really know how you could go about getting underwire to like match your curve exactly on the sewing pattern. I feel like you would almost have to draft a sewing pattern with this curve in mind. I don't know. So yeah, let me know if you know. The next one, it's deep buried in my closet somewhere. It was a dress that I made for my friend's wedding. It was mostly self-drafted, but I also used the Rose Cafe bustier pattern just for like the sort of torso part, but I didn't use the cups, and I didn't use the skirt. Interesting project. Yeah, I am happy with the result, but I was in a big rush when I was making this, and I wish that I had just taken my time just a little bit more to make all the finishings like really beautiful. I I just didn't like really think everything through. Like the fabric was like the tiniest bit sheer, and so as I was making the skirt, I was kind of like, oh shoot, I need a fabric to use as a slip, and I had like the tiniest bit left just of the main fabric, so I was like, oh, I'll just make like a teeny tiny little mini skirt slip. Like that's really the only part of me that needs to be covered. So I did that, and like I didn't even hem that slip underneath. Like it's just a raw edge hanging, because mostly just because I didn't have time. Like I was so busy and the wedding was coming up, but also because like I didn't want that. It was a very thin drapey fabric, and I didn't want you to see like the outline of the slip, and I felt like if you like roll it, like double fold it and stitch it, like it's gonna add some thickness and probably would show. So I just left it as is. Again, like if I had more material, or if I had just like thought ahead and bought material to use as a slip, then I could have hemmed it at like a longer length, and it wouldn't have been as obvious having like a seam right across the front of my thighs. So that's something. The bodice was very tricky for me. I didn't quite nail it, but I think it worked out. Like honestly, I'm very happy with this dress, even though if I were to do it again, I would like definitely make some changes. The bodice, I used like 3 layers of fabric, because I put those little, like, you know, those little pads that come in like bikinis. I just ripped one of those out, or 2 of them, and popped them in the dress. So I just like hand stitched those to the layer in between the outer layer and the lining. And I drafted a paneled skirt, and I was very pleased with the fit of that. So yeah, this was just a very fun dress. I'll show you some pictures here. Quite pleased with it, but again, it wasn't perfect. So if I had any advice to you, it would be, if you're making a fancy dress, give yourself lots of time, or just choose like a very simple pattern, or follow a pattern. Don't try and self-draft. But again, I'm happy with it. So probably the most exciting thing in this video is the dress that I made for my friend to wear to her wedding. I made her wedding dress, and that was so much fun. Although it was terrifying, I made it out of French lace, and the slip was silk. So very delicate, expensive fabrics, and in white, which just means like whenever you're sewing, it's so easy to stain things as you're sewing. Like there can be like oil on the machine if you're using an industrial machine, which I was, or just like, I don't know, just like little bits of dirt here and there. When you're working with like such large pieces of white fabric, they'll like drape all over the place, and it's kind of scary. So it was a bit nerve-wracking, I won't lie, but it was so much fun, and she looked so beautiful in this dress, and I just can't believe that I made a wedding dress. So here's some pictures. It was a great night, so much fun. Okay, but on the technical side, yeah, what can I offer you? French lace is terrifying to sew with. I don't think I can give you any advice other than just like use a really good machine, and always test your stitches, like with scraps. Always keep your scraps when you cut out your pieces. Those scraps are invaluable. The bigger the better, especially with like a long flowing skirt like the slip. I really had to test my tension on like a very long scrap, because sometimes if you just test your tension on like a 6-inch scrap, you're not going to notice if there's like a tiny bit of puckering. But if you do like a full length of a skirt and there's even the slightest bit of puckering, like you really will notice along that length of fabric. So just test your stitch tension and make sure that you really get it right and that it's not like eating your fabric, you know? Yeah, so that's that. Made a wedding dress. My last 2 pieces, I don't know if these technically count. I don't know if I can really put these in the video. Oh, it's not. I just looked down at my feet. Oh God. This is actually I forgot about these. So I made these leg warmers. Okay. I'll take them off so you can see, or I'll take one off. I made these with an assortment of thrifted yarn. I made these out of a white and blue marled yarn, and then darker blue yarn. And then there's a Mohair that has like a bit of purple in it, and a lighter, teeny tinier Mohair here. I don't know if you can see these tiny little strands. Very simple. I just used double crochets, started with a chain, then joined in the round, and did some decreases for the ankle, and then many, many increases just so they can kind of like fit over my boots and shoes. So very pleased with these. All right, and then I guess I knit and crocheted a bunch of gifts this year as well. I think I have footage of one gift that I made. For some part of this year, I was working at a clothing brand called Odeyalo. If you're familiar with this brand, you probably know their balaclavas. We had some extra material, and sort of like spur of the moment, we decided to make pants. We didn't have a ton of fabric left, so we just made 3 pairs of these pink pants, one for each of us who was working. And yeah, it was a really fun time. So again, I'm not really sure if this counts because like I did sew these personally, but like technically like Odeyalo sewed them. Yeah, these are the pants. That's it. Is that it? It was very nice to meet you. And I'm gonna be watching all of your videos as well, if you made some, about what you made. I love watching these videos and just like seeing the patterns that everybody uses, and then you can make the patterns. I'll see you soon. Bye.